us now, ladies and gentlemen, the authority of college football, Pete Thamel.
Hey, Peter!
Pete, what's up? See you jacked up. Merry Christmas, pal. How you doing?
Gentlemen, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to stop by. I love the Christmas backdrop, Pat. Very festive.
It's the North Pole, Pete. It's the North Pole. This is where all the magic happens, obviously, in this time of year. And I'll tell you what, we haven't had any Pete Thamels on the show in a while.
No.
It is great to hear your voice.
Yeah.
It is great to hear your voice. But anytime you're coming on to explain a situation that we have learned about. We just talked to Nick Saban about the NIL, the transfer portal, the business, the collectives, everything college-wise. So I don't want to chit-chat about that. What I would like to chat about is this breaking news this morning, pretty much, that FSU has a meeting happening this Friday morning. They have a bunch of lawyers basically scanning the deal with the ACC to see if they can find an out so that they don't get fined $70-some million, I believe was the number, I forget what it was exactly. Pete, can you explain this to us a little bit more? And is this Florida State saying, we went undefeated in the ACC? We're the ACC champs, and it still wasn't good enough. With all the money that's going everywhere else and the state of our league currently, we need to get out of here? Is that kind of the messaging, and how do you see this kind of going?
So I think that the Florida State snub amplified their desire to push this to this step we're at right now, Pat. But if you really look, I guess the news is that Florida State has called a board meeting for Friday to discuss potentially taking legal action to get out of the grant of rights. Do you want a grant of rights explanation?
Sure,
Pat?
sure. And how much
All
money,
right.
too, what the grant of rights is. We need that for sure.
So a grant of rights, by definition, is when you sign a conference television contract. Part of it inherently, as long as I've done this, is that if the deal like the ACC's is currently is through 2036, you grant the ACC your rights. So right now, the ACC owns the rights to every team in the ACC's home sports content until 2036. So it's the same for Florida State as it is for Boston College, Wake Forest, Miami, whoever else. And when they signed the 20-year deal somewhere around 2015, 16 to do this, they essentially said, you own all our content, for lack of a better way to put it. So now, 8 years in, Florida State officials have been very clear that they feel like the ACC deal is now out of market. And therefore, they want to unwind from the grant of rights, which would be the first step towards leaving the league and then joining another league. This is not going to be clean or linear. The lawyers will win, as they always do, and the billable hours are already astronomical. You'll enjoy this detail, Pat, for the absurdity of it. In order to examine the grant of rights, you have to go to the ACC's offices. You're not allowed an actual copy of it. So Florida State has gone at least a half dozen times. I've been told maybe as many as 8 or 9. To Greensboro first and then Charlotte when they moved. And they've had lawyers, officials, everybody examine this grant of rights with a fine-tooth comb. You're not allowed to take a copy out.
So you have to go into their house to tell them that you're trying to get out of their deal.
Correct.
So it's like Wolf of Wall Street when they're getting audited. They're sitting in a very cold room, probably, very hot room. They're not getting any waters, no food, no DoorDash allowed.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. Got it. And they're paying. The Florida State is paying these lawyers to do this. A lot of money.
Yes. They're definitely, the lawyers are definitely winning right now out of Tallahassee. So this moment is not surprising if you listen to Florida State's rhetoric in the last year. In February, Michael Alford, the athletic director, said something has to change financially in order for Florida State to stay in the ACC. In August, the school president said that they very seriously consider leaving the ACC. Now, like in the history that I've done this 20 years now, Pat, nobody that I've ever seen has come out and spoken this overtly against a league. So today's announcement that there's a board meeting tomorrow is essentially actions meeting words. And the actions were expedited because of the snub. But I don't think you can fairly say this is solely because of the snub. They wanted to do this. They've essentially declared they're going to do it, and this is how they're going to do it. And to answer the financial piece, I think it's important to say that it's two-pronged, right? If you were just to cleanly exit the ACC, it would cost $120 million. But you're also going to have to somehow unwind from the grant of rights. I'm not a lawyer, and this is unprecedented with what they're trying to do with the ACC. So you can't say, Wichita State tried to leave the Missouri Valley's grant of rights in 1987. There's no precedent to this at all. So it's difficult to predict how it will go. But the thought would be there would have to be some kind of negotiated resolution, which would, again, be very expensive. Florida State's rights for the next 12 years are worth a lot of money. And the ACC isn't just going to say, "Oh, okay, we're going to let you go." So that could be another $100 million plus, either negotiation or a court says, "Okay, we'll allow you to go, but you have to pay the worth of it." And it's a tremendous amount of money. So this is going to be expensive, and it's not certain to work. Court could say, "You know what? You willingly signed these documents. You're gonna have to honor your contract."
Interesting. That's why the lawyers are going in there trying to find every asterisk that they possibly can. This is the force majeure situation that got dropped into a lot of different contracts after, the COVID situation. So good luck to the lawyers in that hot room in Charlotte, North Carolina, the home of ACC. Good luck to Florida State. But there might come a conversation of do we spend about $200 million on this, or do we put that in a collective and continue to do it to our team? That's and them getting, screwed this year. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Not fair.
No.
I could see how we got to get out of here. We're making the least amount of money. What is it? They're making their TV deal, the ACC deal. It's something like 20, maybe 20 or something like that. What is the TV deal?
So the best way to characterize it going forward, and the TV deals are sort of dynamic and fluid, is that when the SEC and Big Ten are at full throttle in the upcoming years, the expectation is they'd be about $30 million behind annually. So the thought that's been prevailing at Florida State, and Clemson has mentioned this as well, is that we can't compete with, if you're Florida State, say Florida, if you're Clemson, say South Carolina, your neighboring schools, if they're making $30 million more a year than you. Now, there's been some adjustments that the ACC has tried to do to address this issue. They brought in some new teams at a cut rate, and everybody's getting $2 million more a year from that. Success initiatives the ACC implemented this spring that would potentially, if you make the national title game, you could make between, I was told, 12 and 20 million more. We don't know how much the TV contract for the CFP is going to be worth yet. So the ACC has tried to address this issue, but it is those actions have not deterred Florida State. And then, obviously, the next question, Pat, would be: will others also challenge the grant of rights and potentially try to exit too?
Yes, could be precedent here for a lot of other people to get out of there. But if you do some quick math, 120 million, and you're behind 30 million, so that's 4 years, right? Of just basically being left behind is the $120 million. That's probably how they're justifying it in their eyes. Anyways, we appreciate you taking the time, brother. Enjoy yourself. You had to keep track of all the flipping of recruits yesterday. Is that what your day was like yesterday?
I did do a ton of the flipping yesterday. I was working on this stuff yesterday. But yeah, the flipping's fun. Flip season.
Flip's fun. Flip's fun. Ladies and gentlemen, the authority, Pete Thamel. Thank you.
Give me something. Try to shake around.